Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 243, Fear's Grip, Escaping the Chains of Doubt. Welcome back as we finish out this month where we will continue the conversation about one of the biggest things we need to take ownership of in our lives, and that is owning what we feel. Last week, we talked about how important it is to listen to your gut and listen to your feelings. Today, we're going to look at a feeling that can have a huge impact on our lives, and that is fear. But before we get into that, I'm excited to tell you about a great mini-course ebook that I have available now, and that is my Boundaries ebook. It has lots of great information, including the written form and mini podcasts and worksheets and thought provokers, because you know, got to do the work to become more confident. So you don't want to miss that free ebook, and make sure you hit the link in the show notes for that and pass it along to others who could benefit as well. Okay, for today's topic, I want to confront an ever-present companion in our lives, and that is fear. Now, some fear is healthy. Fear keeps us from running out into traffic. Fear keeps us from doing things that could harm us. Fear alerts us to danger and that something is wrong. But sometimes fear can get in the way of living well. It can steal our dreams, it can rob us of opportunities, and hold us back from living our fullest lives. So let's get into that. And one thing I want to focus on today is, I'm not talking about the obvious fears. I'm talking about the subtle stuff that we don't often see. Because fear can be a master of disguise. It can masquerade as a protector, keeping us from harm, but at the same time, I think robbing us blind. Because it convinces us that it's keeping us safe, but sometimes in reality, it's actually keeping us small. We want to talk today about the insidious nature of fear, how it whispers lies of inadequacy and failure, and it can create barriers between us and our aspirations. Because fear is sneaky. It's pretending to be our friend, but sometimes it's actually the thing that's holding us back from really good stuff. Because it tricks us into thinking that it's there to protect us and it's all good, but the truth is sometimes it's limiting us. Like imagine fear is a voice in your head that says, don't try that new thing, you might fail. Or you're not good enough, so don't bother. Here are some more examples of thoughts that fear might whisper to us, along with, and this is the important part, and what we lose out on when we listen to them. So here's a thought, you're not smart enough to go back to school. What's the consequence of believing that? Missing out on the chance to pursue a career path or a passion that could really light up your life. That could allow you to use your gifts and really help people. Another thought is, people are going to laugh at your art or your writing or your music. And so you hold back your creativity and you never share your unique gifts with the world. The thought of, if you ask for a promotion, they might just think you're being too ambitious. The consequence of that could be staying in a job that doesn't fulfill you, and then you're missing out on opportunities for growth and advancement. And I think earning what you deserve and being in a position where you need to be. Another thought is, what if you travel alone and something bad happens? But then the consequence is missing out on the chance to explore new cultures, make new friends, and maybe broaden your perspective, and some good time with you. Here's a common one. You're too old to start something new. That really limits your potential for growth and personal fulfillment based on an arbitrary belief that may not be true for you. What about if you tell them how you really feel, they may not like you anymore? Now that's usually a subconscious thought, not a conscious one. But if you hold back your true self in relationships, we know that you are preventing deep connections and authenticity and growth. Starting a business is too dangerous, is too risky. What if you fail? And that means you miss the opportunity to build something meaningful, to learn valuable skills, and maybe even achieve success. We wouldn't have any businesses in the world if everyone thought that. Here's a common one. You've never been good at public speaking, so don't embarrass yourself. So then you avoid situations where you could improve your communication skills, you could network, you could share your ideas with others. What if you try and everyone sees you fail? Letting the fear of embarrassment prevent you from taking chances, learning from your mistakes, is also keeping you from ultimately succeeding. These are just a few examples, but they illustrate, I think, how fear can manifest in many different areas of our lives. And they hold us back from taking risks. They keep us from pursuing our passions and embracing opportunities. Now, I want you to think for a moment what some of your internal messaging might look like. Are there ones that come to mind that you're already aware of? But what if you can't figure them out? What if you're like, Mary, I have no idea what they are? Well, here's what you can do to figure that out. And it's actually to start working backwards in each area of your life. Now, you first get honest about the things you haven't tried, the things you haven't confronted, the things you've been kicking the can on, like the things you say, yeah, I really want to do that, but you don't make any strides towards making that happen. Or things you allowed, things you sabotaged, things you avoided, opportunities and relationships that you pushed away. That'll give you some answers. You work backwards from there. Then you uncover the fear of rejection, fear of failure, all the thoughts that I just talked about earlier. They're just fears of it's not going to be okay. It's controlling the outcome in our minds subconsciously to protect us from being disappointed, from being hurt, from being rejected, from being abandoned. And this voice of fear creates a bubble around us, keeping us in our comfort zones. It tells us we're safer. We're safer if we stick to what we know, even if what we know isn't making us happy. It whispers these little lies so often that we start to believe them. Your subconscious is adaptive. It's going to believe them if it hears them enough and doesn't get evidence to the contrary. For example, let's say you've always dreamed of starting your own business. Well, fear is going to chime in with thoughts like, well, you don't have enough experience at that. Or what if you lose all your money? These thoughts feel real and scary because they're also possible. So we often listen to them and we stay right where we are instead of taking that leap. So fear doesn't always come roaring in like a monster, right? It's not always that obvious. I think it's more like a quiet, persistent doubt that holds you back. It convinces you to play it safe. And the longer you listen to your fear, the smaller your life will become. You miss out on adventures, on opportunities, and the chance to truly grow into your fullest self. But where does it come from? The fear of starting a business or any other endeavor or taking any other risk can really stem from a variety of sources, we know. And like we said in the beginning, some fear is healthy, right? It keeps you safe. But we want to look at how our past experiences and the environment we grew up in play a big part in this. And here are some ways that our upbringing, including having an anxious parent, can really contribute to these fears. Now, the first obvious one is failure. So if we've experienced failure or setbacks in the past, obviously we don't want to repeat those experiences. For instance, maybe you tried something and it didn't go well. Your project that you tried didn't go well. The business you started kind of flopped in the first year. Things didn't go as planned. So it makes you really hesitant to try again. Your brain has that one template in it. It says, oh, we're not doing that. What about rejected? Being rejected in the past, whether in personal relationships, maybe on job applications or a creative thing you tried to do, can lead to the fear of rejection and then keep you from trying again. because you don't want to put yourself out there. Remember, it's that perceived threat to the self-concept is what's scary. And so you freeze and you don't do it. Lack of support. So growing up in an environment where our ideas maybe were dismissed or not encouraged can really create self-doubt. Because if we didn't have support then, number one, we internalized all that self-doubt about our abilities and about life and all the things. But we also may not realize that we fear not having support in our new venture. What about comparison? Your brain wants to compare a chair and a table because it works in categories. So it's really hard sometimes not to compare ourselves to others, especially those who seem more successful, because they can make us feel inadequate. It can lead to fears of not measuring up or not being as capable as others. A big influence can be anxious parents. So having an anxious parent can significantly impact our relationship with fear and risk-taking. So I want to talk a little bit about that because that can be a big thing. And it's not to bash your parents, it's just to understand the influence on you. So first, obviously, learned behavior. Kids often learn how to react to situations by observing their parents, even if they don't realize that's what they're doing. So if a parent is constantly anxious about uncertainty or taking a risk or thinking out of the box or rolling with it, the child might adopt a similar mindset and become more controlling and careful. Maybe the parent had a protective instinct. Maybe they unintentionally instilled a fear of failure or risk in their child as a way of seemingly protecting them from harm. They're going to warn the child against taking risks for fear of something going wrong. Children of anxious parents might grow up seeking constant approval and validation and fearing the consequences of making a mistake or failing to meet expectations, because think about it, anxious parents are often reactive. They can't help it. That's the whole thing about anxiety is you're reactive. So if the kid spills the milk and mom's already rattled, that's not going to go well. And then the child feels responsible for mom's feelings, and here we go. The blurred boundaries. I also have to wonder that if you have anxious parents or an anxious parent, it was really hard for your parent to be both anxious and emotionally really present for you at the same time. That's hard. They probably struggle with boundaries and detachment and empathy. Anxious parents often overestimate the danger. So they're a little over the top and they can't land the helicopter. So they inadvertently teach their kids to overestimate dangers of certain situations. So this, obviously, over time can translate into a general fear of the unknown and of taking a risk in general. And then coping mechanisms. So to cope with these fears, our minds often create narratives that seem logical and real. So like in the case of starting your business, they might include, well, you don't have enough experience. That could be a way of protecting you from potential failure. Or what if you lose all your money? That might be a fear of financial instability, especially if stability was a concern in your childhood. And just to remember, in general, our brain is wired for negativity for survival. So the negativity bias is there, and it makes negative outcomes seem more likely or more impactful than they might actually be. So then we tend to focus on the risks in the worst case scenarios rather than the potential rewards. So understanding where some of your fears may come from is extremely helpful in understanding why you may struggle to take a risk today. You need to recognize that these thoughts and fears, while real, aren't always based on current reality, and they don't have to predict the future. I think it's really important to grieve some of that. If you look back and say, wow, maybe my mom really had so much anxiety, she protected me and kept me from taking risks, and I internalized that and lived my life that way. And that makes me angry, perhaps. It's okay to grieve that, and to be sad, and to be disappointed. Disappointed that nagging voice in your head was always telling you that you can't, you shouldn't, and you won't. And it painted a picture of a scary world outside your comfort zone. When in reality, that's where the magic happens. If you want to break free from the fear, you have to recognize these whispers for what they are, oftentimes false alarms that keep you from reaching your true potential. They are different from your intuition, like we talked about last week. Intuition is quiet. It's a quiet knowing. Fear is alarm bells and anxiety and fight or flight and freeze responses. So a lot of you probably know what your fears are, and they know how they hold you back. But you're asking, how do I break out of this? How do I change? I think first you have to do some contrast work. And it's really important to talk about the cost of fear. The personal cost of living under fear's shadow. Missed opportunities, dreams left unfulfilled, and the toll it can really take on your mental and emotional well-being. Lots of worry, lots of distraction, lots of ruminating. Choosing courage over comfort is the answer. And eventually stepping into the unknown, embracing uncertainty. But I think you have to have some feelings around, what have you missed out on? What does it cost you? Like really, and you have to gut level, and you can't minimize it, say, oh, it's fine. You can do that later. But I want you to think this week about, what are some opportunities you didn't take because there was a risk and you'll never know? Then how does that make you feel about yourself? What are some things you would still like to do today but are afraid? And what if I told you 10 years from now you're going to look back and you're really going to regret the things you didn't try, not the things you tried, usually. So you have to get real about lost connection and relationships, lost opportunities, either for your career or for finding adventure or being creative or all the above. And really sit with that and see how you feel about that and see if that's okay with you. Yes, I'm being a smart aleck for a reason. Do you know why? Because the one thing I know is bigger than fear is healthy anger. And sometimes we need to get good and angry for a minute at what fear has taken from us before we can find the courage to change it. So let's talk about looking towards the future with some hope and determination instead of fear. What are some ways we can practice that? Well, first, get your why together. And you've heard me say that before because I think it's so profound. How do you do that? Well, look at your values. Take time to reflect on what really matters to you and why. What are the principles and beliefs that you hold dear? When you get a handle on your values and really get clear with them, I think they provide a compass for your decision making. And then what makes this better is that, and what makes this truly helpful, is that it helps you align your actions with what's important. It figures it out for you. So let's say you value connection and relationship, but you're afraid to put yourself out there. Focusing on what matters becomes more important than your fear of making it happen. Another thing is to set meaningful goals, clear, achievable goals that resonate with your values and your passions. Then you break them down to smaller steps to make them less daunting. You have a roadmap, and then you grab support. We need support and encouragement. And then practice a self-compassion when you navigate challenges and setbacks. And you understand that you know now that growth involves learning and sometimes stumbling. And challenge negative thoughts. So when fear-based thoughts come up, I want you to question their validity. Are they based on facts or assumptions? Do you really know that to be true? I think is a really helpful thing to ask ourselves. And then challenge the narrative by focusing on the real evidence that supports your abilities and strengths. And, like I tell you all the time, take small steps, gather the data, that will give you better information than just sitting there and assuming and projecting out what it's going to be like. Because you may be wrong. Visualization is another thing that we've talked about here on the show because I think it's extremely powerful. Imagine yourself achieving your goals. How does that feel? Why is that great? Why does that motivate you and give you hope? Because it does. Visualizing success can really build confidence and motivation. Because again, your subconscious doesn't really know after a while that that's not real. And you want to do the same thing in reverse, right? Because we talked a few minutes ago how if you repeat a negative thought enough, you start to believe it to be true. Well, I want you to do the same thing in an opposite way. You visualize going after that thing enough and that it feels great and it's doable, it's in your hand, it's in reality. You're going to believe it, and then you're going to align your life, and then you're going to be getting things together, like the courage and the help and the support and the bravery to go after it. So identify your comfort zone, and then think about things right outside of your comfort zone that you think you can try soon. And then there are things further out from those that you want to have, do, and be. They seem a little far off right now, but that's okay. Because every time you take a step, you get closer. Focus on the little wins because they build your confidence and they give you proof that you can do this. And then try to keep your mind on the process, not just the outcome. Enjoy that journey of getting from A to B and how good that's going to feel because you made that happen. You know, we don't feel good about things that are handed to us or that maybe we took a shortcut to obtain. Deep down, we feel really good about ourselves when we worked hard for something and we earned it and we achieved it and we made it happen. And that process changes us and we become different and it imprints upon us. That's what the journey is. All the bought and paid for moments, all the learning, all the insights, all the humility. Remember, fear may have been a shadowy companion, but it doesn't have to define you anymore. You have the power to break free. You have the power to live more boldly, and you can go after what you want. So today we confronted the insidious nature of fear, which I think masquerades as a protector while robbing us of what we want to have in life. It whispers to us lies about inadequacy and failure and doom and gloom, and it's what often keeps us small and confined within our comfort zones. We also explored the personal costs of living under fear's shadow. We talked about the missed opportunities and then what that does to our emotional well-being and the regrets we might have 10 years from now. And finally, we talked about some ways for you to step away from the fear and decide that something is more important. And that is what you value and what you care about and what you're passionate about. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you found some things today that resonated and that you can work on. And if you're already working on your fear, you go and you keep going. It's a worth it journey. And if you need more support, check out my 12-module course, which is self-paced and has a group coaching component and a one-on-one piece as well. So you get all the support and encouragement that you need to look fear in the face and say, no more. All right. Pay it forward. Keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.